Hello, hi everyone. My name is Ezekiel and welcome to today's webinar. It's going to be on React. We're going to build a small application using React. But before we build an application, I wanted to talk about a few React concepts that we're going to actually utilize while we build this small app. So I have a small slideshow that I'm going to present before we start building. I'll also demonstrate the application that we're going to be building. So let me just share my screen real quick. And there we go. Okay, you'll bear with me. I think my internet connection is not the best, but I'll try to work within what it is. Okay, so these are the slides. Let me just start the slideshow. Okay, it's loading. Just let me know if you're able to see my screen in the comment section. Yeah, so basically, once again, we're going to be talking about React, and my name is Ezekiel, and I'm doing this with Adihas. So let's get right in. So what is React? So React is a JavaScript library that is used to build user interfaces, basically for web applications. It was developed by Facebook in, I think, 2011, and it provides a component-based approach to building UIs. What this means is your UI is basically made up of various components. So the component-based approach has the advantage of code reusability, because you create one component. Let's say you want a button here and there. You'll create one button and reuse it in several places. Just tweak it a little bit. You're going to see how that is possible. So that's basically it about React. It's a JavaScript library. What a library is basically it's pre-written code you can use majorly for configuration, setup. For example, now with React, you're able to just focus on building the UI without worrying about setting up bundlers like Webpack or Bubble. All those come out of the box for you. All you have to worry about is build your user interface. So that's basically it about React. It's a library that you use to create user interfaces. Some of the concepts that we're going to be looking at include, we already talked about the component-based approach, and we're going to see how that works. I can briefly talk about components in React. There are two ways you can create components. One is you can create classes. However, classes make it a little bit, the structure becomes a little bit convoluted, which becomes a little bit hard to track. So functional components, you can create actually functions, real functions as your components. So what basically that means is you're going to have a function that returns HTML-like code, which basically defines your UI. And each component has its own, which defines the state of the data in that component. That is a powerful tool in React. We're going to see how it works. The other concept is, now we talked about HTML-like code. So React introduces JSX, which is just an extension for JavaScript. It allows you to write HTML-like code directly within the JavaScript. That makes it easier to describe your UI components in an intuitive manner, which makes your code easier to read and maintain. One major concept of React is called is the virtual DOM. So the virtual DOM is basically a light in-memory representation of the actual DOM. Remember what the DOM is in JavaScript? It's that tree data structure representation of your page, of your UI. So what React does, it makes a representation that in memory and uses that to perform efficient updates and reconciliation. I won't go much into the detail of that. I will task you to go and look it up if you're not well conversant with it. It's a powerful feature of React, which makes React really fast in rendering your UI. We're going to see how that works. Then there's one concept of React, which is unidirectional data flow. Just like the name says, unidirectional data flows in one direction. And in React, basically, it flows from the parent element to the child. I call it element. It's a component. Parent component to the child component. Yeah, so that's basically it. For example, we're going to see how it works in our application. We shall have a parent component which holds the state and gets data from an external resource, an API that we're going to just create in 30 minutes. And then it passes data to the child components to be rendered. To see how that works, we talked about state, each component having state. Yeah, so basically state is an inbuilt feature of a React component. It represents the current condition of the data, current condition data of the component. It's mutable, meaning it can change over time in response to a user action, to a network response, or other events. So you declare it, initialize it. In class components, it's initialized in the constructor, if you know the class syntax in JavaScript. And to update it, there's a convention where you use the setState method provided by React. For us, we're going to be using what is called hooks. We're going to talk briefly about them. Yeah, then props is basically short for properties. And what basically props are, these are inputs to your components. Remember, we said our React components are functions, right? So we can pass them parameters. Those parameters are termed as props. Like you can see, they can be passed from the parent component to the child component. Now, with props, they are not immutable, meaning you can't change them from your child component. You can only change them in the parent component. Yeah. Yeah, so that's one key difference between props and state. State can change over time. Props cannot be changed by the child component. Them. So hooks are basically newer features in React, and they came about when functional components were introduced. Initially, components were class. You would define them as classes. However, the structure was a bit convoluted. It was a bit hard to deal with. So they introduced functional components, which make it so easy. So to manage state and run side effects, they introduced React hooks to be used in functional components. So they are simpler and they provide an intuitive way to manage component state and events, just like we said earlier. Among the built-in hooks that we're going to look at is use state and use effect. They are basically some other hooks, but we're going to look at them in this build. I would ask you to go and look at the React documentation, the official documentation. It actually includes interactive examples that you can follow along. So one other feature in React is conditional rendering. This is just like the name says, it's basically you render something based on a certain condition. So for example, in the UI, if you're fetching data, you want to render maybe a loading screen. And then once you get the data, you want to render that data. So you could do that conditionally. In React, this is made easy with state. Basically, you use state, and based on your state, you render a certain element in the UI. To see how that works. And then one other thing I would like to talk about is forms and controlled components. So forms, HTML forms basically handle their own state. For example, if you have an input element, maybe where you type a text, it's going to have its own is determined by what the user inputs. However, in React, to take control over over the input state, you're going to use the React state and control that input so that you have synchronism between your state and your UI. Okay, we're going to see how that works. Then we also have React Router. It's a feature for handling routing in React. So what this feature basically gives us is client-side routing. What client-side routing means is basically when you make a request, for example, let's say on the home page, and you request maybe a form, a certain form, which is a different page, instead of you sending a fresh request to the server, you're just going to render something, the form you're going to route within your browser without going to the server. That means your routing is going to be fast because you're not requesting a new HTML, a new CSS and JavaScript from the server. You're just doing everything from your browser, your client. So this is basically what we're going to be building. The demo is here. We have a navbar. We have a small logo on the left and certain navs on the right. One goes to the drinks page and goes to the snacks page. The other one gives us the form that will help us create a new item. Yeah, so that's basically it. And for this build, we're going to need some dependencies, which we're going to install using the package manager. One of them is a JSON server. With this one, we're going to have a fast API, but we're not going to write any code to create the server. And then we have concurrently. This one basically allows us to run our back end and our front end using one command at the same time. Then we have Axios. Axios, we're basically going to use it to make APIs to our JSON server that we shall set up. And then we have React Router DOM. This one is what is going to enable client-side routing. Yeah, so basically client-side routing aids faster user experiences because you don't need to leave your browser when you're routing through your page, your application. Yeah. Okay, so that's basically it. This is just some small quote about React. Basically has simplicity at the same time it has in creating dynamic interfaces. Get into the building. So for the building, I've already created a scaffold. This is what the library does. So I use Vite to scaffold a basic React template application. So it creates for you a folder structure, does most of the configurations like you can see. These are files configuring it. So I used Vite. I think it's called Vite. So I already have the skeleton of the application. So we'll go in and start building. But before we build, I want to define a few scripts in my package.json file. Yeah, because remember I talked about us. So these are the packages I've installed already. In the interest of time, so I have React Router DOM, I have JSON server, I have concurrently and Axios. So to set up concurrently, I'm going to have to set up a few scripts here. So I'll have one that starts my front end. And remember how you run a Vite application is npm run dev. So what that does is it's going to run this script, which will start the front end. And I'm also going to define one that starts my back end, which is the JSON server that creates for me a array. For it, the usage is you create a db.json file and define your data. So basically, I need drinks app. I've already predefined this db.json, and I'm going to specify this port 5000, a unique one. And now concurrently will help me run a start command, which will run both. Right, I need to close in first. Then I'll run the front end. I want my server to run before the front end because I'm going to be getting data from the back end. So that's a little bit of setup I've done there. Let me run the script to see if it's working as expected. I hope everything is clear. Let me know in the comments box. Let me see. Let me hide this. Oh, sorry about that. Okay, it's taking a bit of time. While it's doing that, let me just define my folder structure. So usually, since React uses components, I usually like to create a components folder. It's like a convention for better organization. So in my component, this is going to house all the components that I'm going to define. And then we're going to be using React Router. So I'm going to go into details of how to do it. I'm just going to do it so that you see it's done. There are various ways of doing it. So I'm going to use my app parent element component. So sorry, I didn't talk about the folder structure that Vite creates for me. If you went to the official documentation, you'll get all that. So basically here, I'm rendering the app component, which is the parent to all the other components. So Vite basically has a basic UI that it defines. So like you can see, we talked about writing HTML like code within your JavaScript. So here it's a function called app, and it's returning this HTML like code. That's yeah. I don't know what's going on with my script. Okay, it's doing that. I could clear everything out because we don't need it in our parent component. So I'll just get the server and front end. All right, so I'll just do an H2. H2. And I'll say my cafe app. All right, so there are some files you don't need, like these ones, which come when you scaffold your these are specific to Vite. Another way of starting a React app is using create React app. However, it is very slow. So Vite is a bit quicker and more flexible. Okay, so these are assets. Just something about Vite is when you define something in the public folder, let's say an asset, you access it as something that is basically at the same folder structure as where you're accessing it from. But however, when you have something in the asset folder, you're accessing it. But I don't need these. I'll just take them out. I'll use this. I remember we talked about it. It helps us define and initialize and update our state. It's a hook in React, so we're going to be needing it. So you see, JSON server, I defined my resources in this db.json file, and it just avails the endpoints based on my resources. So it has created for me an endpoint for docs, and I can do all the RESTful operations on that. I can query, I can get, I can post, I can buy these resources, I can update those resources that are already, and I can delete resources in there. So it has availed the resources, meaning my backend server is available. I could demonstrate that using a small extension I have here in my. It's called Thunder Client. It helps me test APIs within my editor. I don't have to use. So both our back end is running and our front end is running. So I'll just access this in our browser. I'll just run it so that we see if it's actually working, rendering our H2 element. Time is fast shifting. So looking at the demo of our application, so it's already opened actually. That's how fast Vite is. It runs things so fast. Yeah, so while it's fully loading, among the components, we're going to have a home page where we display the number of items we have on our menu. So I'm going to create a component here called home component, which will be the page that will be rendered when our application first runs. So I'm scaffold a simple React functional component. I can use this code snippet and basically scaffold a functional component, defines the function, returns, and then exports it by default. Yeah, so I will have that. So I can come and create routes and render that. Okay, let's first check if our application is actually running as expected. A bit of time. Okay. Yeah, we have our H2 being rendered. So the whole setup is working as expected. One thing I want to do is I want to first remove these default styles that come from the index and the app.css. We want to use border box sizing. So we're gonna do, this is maybe what should I call it? It's like a convention of resetting default CSS that your browser uses. So we're gonna do box sizing. Want to include, we're gonna use border box. Then we're going to remove all the margins, set it to 0. I'm going to set the padding 0 as well. And then I want to set a font family. Should I use Roboto this time? It's not included, so let me use Franklin. It's there. Okay, let me use this to match our demo. So if we check, see the centering, everything, the margins are all gone. All right, so that's working as expected. So let's define our routes first, because we're going to talk about client-side routing. So how do we define routes? Just like we saw, React Router DOM, the package, avails us something called browser router, which should wrap all our routes. If you have any route outside this, it will cause issues. So just make sure all your routes are wrapped within browser router. Okay, it imported it automatically, but I don't know why it's showing that it has an error. Okay, it's a bit of a lag. So within the browser router, I'm going to have a nav. Remember, we have a nav bar within, because we're going to be using the link element from the React Router DOM. And then I'm going to define my routes. So what this setup means is my nav bar is going to appear for all the pages, for all the routes that I will define, and the components that I will render. I'll have my nav bar consistent on all the pages. That's what I want. That's why I'm rendering it outside the routes component. So I'll define my first route. I also use this from React Router DOM. So if I click on that, it will import it. I didn't import routes. So you can press Control Enter on Windows to actually get suggestions of where to import something that you just typed. So how you define routes is you specify the path. So my home page is going to be going to the home page. So the element I'm going to render is going to be the home page, sorry. So how you define components is you capitalize their file names. That's like a convention in React. I have to close off this. It's a self-closing element, the route. Yeah, so I've basically defined my first route. Let me see. Let's see if it actually works. Is it going to render the home? Let's refresh and see. It's taking a bit of time, which we don't have. It's taking a bit of time. However, as you can see in our console, it was optimizing the new package, React Router DOM. Hopefully it's done so. Let's see. Okay, we have a small error here. Navbar is not defined. Yes, our component in our routes is not defined. This one here. So let me first comment it out for now, so that we don't get that. Yeah, Control and spacebar helps you import. I usually love to have these inputs before the CSS route is working as it. All right, so let's define our navbar since we've already put it, navbar.jsx. So for vit.jss, it's gonna shout at you. So I love to use. So like we saw, we're gonna have. So I'm first going to use like you use in normal HTML. Show you how React Router DOM actually improves that. So here, when we click on our logo, we want it to the home page. That's why we define the homepage route, and it's the one I'm specifying. So I'm going to use a UL and a list. I need to list items at least. Remember, we have drinks, we have. All right. However, I want this to be anchor tags as well. So I'll define anchor tags in there. Href to the snacks page. So we shall define a route for it. These drinks. Okay. Okay, just change that real quick. I'll just cut this out and define an anchor tag. This is going to go to snacks, and then yeah, that's the value tag. Okay, so that's the basic nav bar. So let's come and actually import it in our routes page. So if I control, I have not defined, I've not exported my component. So I defined it in the home page. Sorry about that. In my H2 here. H2. Sorry about that. Just functional component with its export right there. Then I'll just take out all this JSX and render my nav element. So if I save and come and import it in my routes page, now I have it. All right, so let me CSS. Let's see on our homepage. So if I click on the drinks, if you look at, I see, because our anchor tag goes to this, it routes to the drinks page. However, we don't have any route defined for that. Also don't have any route. But I see how it's lagging. It's reloading the entire page. Okay, that's not efficient. That's not fast. So let's use the element from React router DOM that actually optimizes these anchor tags to the link component. So, sorry. So I'll do link, and then I'll import it from React router DOM. Hope it loads. While it's loading, the link element uses the to attribute instead of href. So we have to change this as well to link called. All right, let's see how if it should go to the defined yet. All right, let me import it. Yeah, so now it shows. Now if we try, warning is gone. So if I click on drinks, I see how fast it is. It's now faster. It's not reloading the entire page. Now that there is client-side routing. So we have our nav bar done. Can we style it a little bit? Let's see. I like doing it here. So so link elements actually are compiled into anchor tags. At your page, you'll see anchor tags. However, in your code, you're running a link element. So let's first style this. I want it to be a flex container, so I'll do display flex so that they are horizontally aligned. So I'll align item center. Let me give it a background color. I'll use now, and I want to use the color of white, black and white, where it really comes out. My anchor tags are not inheriting the color from the parent, so I'll just have to change that behavior. So I want to define a CSS file for better organization to separate my styling. So I'll come here, I'm defining styles for nav. First paste them in there. I'm running formatter to try to format them a little bit better. Okay, while it's running, I need to import CSS file in my navbar component. So I'm gonna do navbar.css CSS it, and then I'm gonna come and save my styles. Prettier is not working, I don't know why. Okay, so I'm going to go to my high-level components and define my styles for the anchor tag. I don't want them to be underlined, so I'll do text decoration, none. And then I want them to input the color from their parent, so I'll do inherit as the value of that property. All right, and then when I hover over them, so I'll give them an opacity so that they are a bit blurry. So let me use 0.7. And then when I hover over them, I want them to become clearer. So I'll do opacity of 1, full opacity. All right, so then one thing, as you can see, yeah, the color is actually there. However, our list items have a list actually bulleted, so I don't want bullets. So I'll do li for all of them. I'll do list style. I don't want to list style them, so I'll do list style none. So if I come and check, they are gone. All right, so that's nice. Let's try to style our UL to have the elements horizontally aligned. So I'll also make it a flex container. And then let's say align item center. I'm gonna give it a small gap, maybe 10px, separate the items. Yeah, let me give it a margin left of auto so that it's automatically set based on the view width. So that pushes my things to the right, which I actually want. So if I come and do that for the UL, right, actually I want to do it in the nav. So here I'm gonna say nav UL to avoid conflict with other UL. I want to give this a height so that it's not as small, so I'll give it a 48px. I also want to give it a padding so the items are off the margins, so I'll give it a padding of about padding should I give? Okay, I've given it a height, it will push it off. Yeah, it pushes it off, but I need a padding left and right, so I'll give it a padding of maybe middle 20 pixels left and right. So I don't want anything on the top. The height does that for me. Yeah, pushes them a little bit inside of the margins. All right, so our nav bar is actually done. Now let's go ahead and work on the home page. So for the home page, since I want my pages to actually look uniform, I'm going to be using a main element, and I want to style it a certain way. So I have my H2, let's say home page, still home page. So I'm going to define the styles for the main here. So I'm going to say main. I want it to have the full width of the viewport, so I'm going to use 100 view width. I want it to be a flex container. I want it to be a column, not a row. Direction, column. I basically want the items in the center, so this time I'll use align. Since it's a column, I'll use align items center. So I want to give it a padding top to push it away from the nav bar. So I'll give it a padding top. I'm going to use 15 view height padding, vertical padding. So I'm using view height. Okay, so that's basically it. Let's see if it's actually, yeah, this is how I want it. So it has that padding off the nav bar and pushes the things to the center. So that's what I basically want, and that's what I'm going to use for all the pages. And the content within my pages, I want to use a class called card. And basically, I want this card to have a box shadow to push it out of the screen. So I'm going to have define it as 0 to px, 2px, and we have 0. I'm going to use a shade of black. So using RGBA, I'm going to have this. I don't want it to be light black, I want it a little bit dark. However, I'm going to define others so that it's around the entire card box. So I'm going to define others, 0, 3px, 1px, negative 2px, still using the same shade of black, however, making it a little darker, 1.2. Then I'm going to define one last one, going to be 0, 1px, 5px, 0, RGB, same shade, however, this time it's going to be a little light. Yeah, and format it a little bit better, okay? I don't know if that is better. I want it to cover about 15%, so I'm going to do with 50 view width. Yep, so I'm going to give it a padding just to push the contents away from the edges. So I'm going to do 20px. Right, so my home component, let me start with this. I'm going to have h1. I need to put it in the card. So remember, I defined my card class, so dot card. I'm going to have an h2 in there, and it's going to be welcome to Cafe app, where test is indeed. So in here, I'm gonna have two paragraphs which are going to tell us what things we have. I'm just doing basic things. So in here, we're going to have an art to add margin on the heading so that it's separate from the other items. I'm going to do that for H2s and H1s, general styling. So H1, H2. I'm going to give them a margin top. I'd probably give them 12px top and bottom. Let's see. Yeah, push it a little bit. So I'm going to just add in our home page here. Just gonna add a control rule here. Separate the heading from the other text. Oh, yeah, it's actually there. So that's basically what we do have as of now. So let me text here. We're going to have number of drinks. Just put a hash to show that, and time is not on my side. Okay, so that's the home page. So let's go ahead. So we want to use our app.jsx as our source of truth. It's where all the data is going to come from. So we need to fetch data from our API. Okay, so remember our API, we set it to run on port 5000. Okay, so to fetch data from an external resource, in React, you're going to use the use effect hook. Yeah, so we're going to say use effect. We import it from React. It's been imported here. And then it runs a callback function that actually runs the effect. Then it has a dependency array. That's the structure of the use effect. To learn more, just go to the React documentation. So in here, I love to create a folder called services where I put code related to external resources. So here I'm going to have API.js, it's the JavaScript file. So I'm going to import a function. The beauty of React is it does Webpack for you to compile modules. So here I'm creating a module that I can use. So it's going to be an async function. We're interacting with external resources. It's an asynchronous operation. So I'll give it a name, get items. So I'll give it a parameter called type because I can get drinks, I can get snacks. I want to reuse this function. So I'm giving it a general parameter. So when I'm interacting with an external resource, I usually love to handle errors. So I'll just log the error this time round, but you could display a beautiful error message for the user. But in the interest of time, I'll just do that. So remember, I said I would use Axios to make API requests. So Axios returns on the response, it returns the data which actually holds our data, so I can destructure it. So I'm using a sync await syntax. So I'll say I will call Axios. The default method Axios uses is get. So I'm getting items. I don't need to specify it. One thing I'm going to do is I'm going to define my base API URL. It's gonna be HTTP. It's a string. Localhost 5000. That's where our server is running, right? So this is const. So I'll do the base API URL. I add on my type I'm going to pass when I call this function. So here I want to return that data. I can use it. So if we came here in our effect here and we wrote a function, it's going to be a sync function. Let's call it fetch data because that's what so this is going to have us wrap our call together. So I would say I'll do drinks first. It's going to be a wait get items. Remember, that's how we called it. I can import it by tapping tab, and then I'm going to pass it drinks. Something small here. In the base, I just need to add that /. Yeah, so remember our endpoints. If I scroll up here, our server, these are the endpoints I'm trying to define. Okay, I'm trying to access these. So I've called my function right here. Let me just fetch the snacks as well. Is equal to await get items. Let's define snacks as my type. So if I just print this for now, just to see. Let's just evoke our function within our effect. So the use effect will basically run everything this component is rendered. So if you want to fetch this data based on a condition, you'll pass it within this array as a dependency. If you leave the array empty, it's only going to fetch the data when the component first renders. That's what we want. So I'm going to leave it empty. So let's check our console. Since we're printing something in the console, let's try to refresh. Hope we have our data with us. Oh, time. Is it actually making the data was there. It's just a bit slow. Yeah, it's there. You can see. So what React does, it prints it twice just to confirm that it's working as expected. But as you can see, we have 4 drinks, we have 3, just like I've already defined in my db.json file right here. I have 3 snacks and 4 drinks. Yeah, so I'm basically making my API request successfully. So let's render the number of items here so that we get done with the home page. How we're going to do that, remember we talked about props, passing data from the parent to the child component. So home component here is our child component. So I'll just pass it items. And what are these items? I can't just pass data from the API. it means I'll just pass it, but it won't affect the UI when it changes. So what I will do is I'm going to define state. Remember, state defines the state, the data of the component and the state. So I'll just call them items, set. Remember, so what use effect does is it returns, it gives you two things, the variable and a state update function. So you can destructure them from that array using this. So what are my items going to be like? So I want to have an object where I have drinks, which is an array, and snacks, which is an array. Okay, so items I'm going to pass as my prop to the home component. So to my home component right here, and received my props, I can destructure those props. So I'll just say items. Okay, so if I came here, I can destructure this further and say const. Remember, it's an object, so I can get the drinks and the snacks from render. This is how you render JavaScript within your JSX, what is HTML like. So here I will say these are what drinks, and here I'll say snacks dot length, right? Because it's an array, we're looking at its length. That's what tells us how many snacks are in the array. Okay, let's see if it works. So while the data is loading, it's still 0. Then when we get the data, probably it will display the number of items. Are we really getting it? Okay, still 0, yet we have the items. Why is that? Okay, this is supposed to be length. We see. Oh, you know why? We're not updating this. Sorry. After fetching our data from the API set items method, and because it depends on the previous state, we're going to call a callback function, and then we're going to return for returning a new object. So this creates a new object, spreads the old object into this new one, and then modifies either the old object or adds items in addition to what you have in the old one. So here what I want to do is I want to, whatever the drinks, set the drinks to drinks, and I want to set the snacks that I have from the API. So actually that works. Yeah, it sure does work. So we have 4 and 3. Awesome. So that's pretty much about our homepage. Now let's go to this other page that matches that, but it actually routes element forwards us to that. Snack, same thing, and it's super quick. So I'm going to go and define those routes. However, I'm going to define one component which I'm going to use for both. It's going to be reusable. So I'm going to call it a menu.jsx. So I'll also scaffold it using my code snippet extension. Hope it responds. Okay, there it is. So in my menu, I'm also going to use the same structure, the main. And in here, I'm going to use the card as well. Card. Yeah, that's pretty much it. So since my component is going to be reusable, I'm going to have like a title here, which I'm going to receive as a prop. I can destructure it from the props object, and I'll say menu. So I'll define routes to that. So I'll come back here and define a route for that. So remember, this is how we define routes. We call this route component, pass it the path prop. Remember here we're finding probably snacks, and the element we're gonna render is gonna be our menu. Sorry, it's this one here. And remember, it's receiving a title prop. So this title is gonna be snacks. Let me capitalize it. It's capitalized. We don't have to do any other data manipulation in this, however, doing drinks instead. So I'll just do drinks, and in here I'll do drinks as well. Okay, let's check it out. Yeah, and surely when we go to drinks, it's going to give us what we're going to do. Let's pass them. So I'm just going to pass a prop called items. What are these items? It's going to be items. Remember, our state has items object with snacks array. This very same one. However, here we have drinks. Okay, let's receive those props real quick and render them. So the prop we're going to have here is going to be item passing. And after our H1, let me just add a horizontal rule, our heading, and then let me do a UL. And in that UL, we want to items. So we're going to say items.map. And then we're going to be returning. This is how you can return on the same line. We're going to return an li. Come on, load. Okay. Yeah. So every time you're rendering list items in React, you need to provide a unique key. Remember, our items in the have a unique ID when they are being created. So I can use item.id for the key. And then what we're going to be rendering here is the name of the item. If you looked at our db.json file, so I'm going to be using the name. When you click on that name, then it loads the details on that item. Okay, so like you can see, it's already showing our items, just so meaning it's working as expected. Menu. Yeah, so it's working as expected. However, it has to be a link. And remember, in React, if we are linking within the same application, we can use our link component to actually optimize the routing. However, if you're linking to an external URL, make sure to use an anchor tag. The link won't work because it's within React. All right, so this is working as expected, I think. Yeah, so we have our link. Remember, we defined styles for our links. These items, in the interest of time. However, like you can see, the link goes to the home page. What I've done here. But we want this to be a dynamic link. When I click on it, I want to render a page that shows the details of the item. So how do I do that? Remember, I can go to drinks and then maybe pass the ID of the drink as a parameter. So I'll just do here and do type, and then pass type as a prop. So I'll come here and do type. Here it's gonna snacks, and here type is gonna be drinks. Let me format it a bit better. Okay. So if we came back to our menu, so we're just going to create this link. So in React, once in your JSX, if you use curly braces, it gives you an environment where you can write JavaScript code. So here, I'm just going to concatenate this using JavaScript string interpolation. So I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to render my type which I've passed, which is either snacks or drinks. And then I'm going to append the ID of the item. Remember, every item has an ID. Okay, so let's see if that actually works. Let's try to click. Okay, if I want to drinks, I have them. If I want to snacks, I have them. So if I click on this, it tells me it goes to item. not rendering it correctly. So I'm supposed to render it as a variable, not as a string. All right, so let's check. Let's go back to the home page. Let's render the drinks. Let's do martini, probably. Doing that. Why? Time. Okay. Let's do this. Oh, the reason I'm doing that is because I haven't defined the route. It's rendering it. It was just updating. Okay. So if I did martini, the ID appears here as martini. So let's define the route. So to define a route that has actually parameter, this is how you can do it. This is in its simplest form. So we're going to say route again. The path is what we're going to define with our parameter. So it's going to be equal to, we're going to say we're doing it for snacks. So we're going to, this is how you define the parameters. And then the element, we need to define an element to render. So I'm going to call it item for now. And then we're going to define it. Okay, so I can repeat this route. And where there's snack, I do drinks. Drinks, same item. Okay, so I need to pass items to this because I need to get the drinks and get the snacks as well, and then find that specific item from there. So this is going to be items dot, these are snacks. So here it's going to be items dot drinks. Time. Okay. So we need to define the item component. Let me define it real quick here. So remember, our file has to be capitalized convention. Let's use our snippet to do a scaffold of our component. Remember, it's receiving items, right? Yeah, as a prop. So we can destructure it like this because the props is an object. So we can destructure it from there like that. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. Let's try to render and see if it actually renders. Item is defined. So we need to import this in our, if we reloaded our page, probably the error will go. Yeah, we have just this item and it shows it for all. So if we went to snack and went to probably this, still render it because when that. So when you have a URL that has parameters, React Router DOM, the package, gives you a use params hook, which you can use to extract parameters. It gives you an object where you can get the parameters. So remember, so we can come and extract it in the interest of time. So I can use that ID to actually find the item from the items array. So I can say my item is equal to items. I can use the find array method to actually item. So I'm going to check if the IDs match, and then I have my item. If the ID item in the array matches the ID that I've extracted from the parameters, I have my item. I'll just store that item and use it. So I'll just console log item. Let me just print it for now. Or instead of printing it, if I actually have it, why not render it in the UI? So I'm just gonna do item dot name. However, remember, you have to use curly braces to render variables, JavaScript variables in your HTML-like code in your JSX. All right, so let's see if actually that works in our browser. Yeah, lo and behold, we have the item. If I went to drinks and did a martini, I'll have a martini. So I have my item. But in the event that I don't have my item, how can I improve the user experience? Let's say I have 12 here. Oh, it's a bit freezing. It's not responding. Yeah, okay, I'll just do that real quick. So in the new React Router DOM, if you want to navigate the user, let's say I don't have the item. I can use React Router DOM, gives me a component, so I need to return it. It's called navigate. it helps navigate from one to a home page in case I've gone to an item that doesn't exist. Okay, so I'll import it from React Router DOM. If it doesn't exist, I want to navigate away. So let me just check in the browser. If I try to go to Martini 1, it actually routes me to the home page. Yeah, it takes me to the home page. So that's how, but however, I want if I don't have a drink. Okay, for now, I'll just leave it at that. You can be creative enough and change that accordingly. If I have my item, its name is being rendered. So let me just create the structure for this real quick because we don't have time. Remember, all my pages, I want to use the styling of the main, simplistic styling. And then I want to place all my content within the card element. Okay, neat. So in here, I'm going to have an h2. Within the h2, I want to render the name of the item. And probably I need to have like a horizontal rule here, separate my heading from the rest of the text. So I'll do three paragraphs here. The first one is going to render. I can use strong to make it bold. Description. So I'm going to say a simple label description. And then I want to do a break line so that this other content goes on the next page. Item.description. So I can copy this and I wish I had, okay, just copy this and paste it. And where is description? I want to put recipe, capitalized, recipe. Where is recipe? And put serve, instructions, item.serve. Okay, so I can remove these redundant paragraph tags that we need. Martini, yeah. So that's pretty much it. If I try to go to an item, a Martini that doesn't exist, based on the ID, it actually reroutes me back to my home page. Okay, you've seen zeros here. That's because it's trying to fetch the data because it reloads. The navigate, whatever, reloads the page. I want to route to the drinks. I can use props, right? But before I do that, let me just add a loading screen. Like we said, we can conditionally render items. So I'll just come here and create a state. I'll set and I'll call it is loading. Set is loading. So I'll render a loading element when I'm trying to fetch the data from the API. So I'll make it true because when I'm starting, I don't have the data. I want to show a loading screen. So here I want to render, I want to return. Let me just use a small paragraph, a loading element throughout. So once I have my data, I want to change it to true, to false, sorry, because it is true. So once my data has come from the API, I want to set is loading. This improves the user experience. False. Okay, I'm no longer rendering the loading page. So let's see if actually that is working. Taking a bit of time. Oh. Sorry, I think my connection is really being interfered with. Yeah, so what I could probably do it in the next session, how to be able to add an item. Okay, in that case, let's see. Now back, let me try to load it. Yeah, so we have a loading screen, and then when we have the data, we render the data. Awesome. So if I came to Nacho, let me go to this item, maybe go to an item that doesn't exist. So I have my loading screen. every time I don't have the data. Okay, that's pretty awesome. So I think I'm going to create another session where I'm going to complete this simple app so that we are able to add custom items to our simple server. Yeah, so that's pretty much today's session. Hope to see you in the next one and hope you enjoyed it. Bear with me, my internet is a bit slow. Yeah, I'm working on improving that. Thank you all. Yeah, see you in the next one.